This is episode 22 of Objectively Biased, and this is Wilder Adams alongside John Tortorelli. And today we are going to talk about the Final Four. We know the national championship game matchup tomorrow, Houston and Florida. We'll talk about that a little bit and kind of recap the late of the game with Duke versus Houston, which is one of the greatest choke jobs in recent college basketball history. And going to the NBA, we're going to talk about Ja Morant. And, there's always Ja Morant steam. So we're going to tap into the, week 55 of Ja Morant doing something stupid. And then we're also going to close out the show with a 2024 NBA Redraft. John, what's going on, my friend?
A lot's going on. I'm really happy to be here. Last night we had a spectacular Final Four between, of course, like you highlighted, Duke and Houston. That's one of my favorite college basketball games of all time. Recently, I have been under the weather. Last week, I basically couldn't get out of bed to record. And so I want to thank you for going solo and doing a fantastic job talking about Cooper Flag versus Arizona, that amazing sequence of performances that he had. And then this week, maybe notice I'm wearing a hat. I guess I'll like to
I was going to
shout
ask
out
about
the
that.
Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. This week, a part of the chapter fraternity that I'm in, Kappa Sigma Pi Nu, me and all my friends shave their heads to raise money for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. So I am a buzzed man, and for the next couple of weeks, I'll not be wearing a hat. But for today, until I get a haircut by my barber, I'm going to be wearing a hat. And yeah, it's a little bit weird. I'm not going to lie to you. I don't ever wear hats. I hate them. And today I'm doing it. Rocking a Detroit hat. Recently made the playoffs the first time in a good amount of years, and their first winning season since 9 years ago. And with that being said, I think we have a great show today. So I'm happy to be here. And once again, I'd like to shout out the cause. If anyone would like to donate and you have the ability to, feel free to do so. And we will be leaving a link in the comments, and anything is greatly appreciated. So thank you for anyone who considers.
Yeah, thank you, John, for shouting that out. And I think it was a very admirable thing to do for you and your fraternity. And, I was telling you earlier today, I think the look looks pretty good on you, by the way. It's
Thank you.
weird because you always had the good slick back hair. This is like, if it
Yeah.
wasn't for Riv, we might have made a show after our hairstyles or something because we both shared the same haircut, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
But, I was telling you, you look a little bit like a young Bobby Hurley.
I'll take that. That's a champion and a pretty awesome dude. And New Jersey, he's a legend in Jersey City. I mean, that to us is one of the greatest New Jersey hoopers of all time. So I appreciate that shout.
I mean, with the proximity, you guys might be related. Who knows? But
What?
I also want to make the point, man. You're wearing a Detroit Pistons hat, man. So are you hiding from the fact that Minnesota owns you guys, man? 6 in a row. 6 in a row.
You guys playing well. What can I say?
Man, it's funny because between Phoenix and Denver, who we played in the playoffs last year, we've beaten Phoenix 8 straight times now, and Denver 6 straight times. So a combined 14 straight wins between the two playoff opponents. And also, bro, I don't think we're going to talk about Westbrook much today, dude, but the dude is a disaster, bro. When it matters most, he's a disaster.
Russell Westbrook's more than anything a roller coaster. The game versus Minnesota was tough because people are going to make mistakes. Athletes are going to. But I felt like it was an example of where on one night, Russell Westbrook can cost you a game with his erratic decision-making. And as a complimentary player in Nikola Jokic, I know he's going to raise the level of guys like Russ, but it's those back-breaking mistakes, the turnovers, the poor decisions, the flub layups and transitions, the late foul at the end of the game that directly leads the Nuggets losing a pivotal game in the seedings. And that's something which in the playoffs is going to be a black mark. And then the next night, Russell Westbrook's dropping 30 points and leading the team without a lot of their players in the lineup. So that's kind of the Russell Westbrook experience in this stage of his career. It's frustrating. I'm not going to lie to you. It is a little bit frustrating, but I want to say one thing. So the fans out there that are heckling Russ, throwing stuff after the games at him, I despise those fans. I really don't like when people dehumanize athletes in that way. And after the game, of course, Russell makes a few mistakes. You see people in the stands chirping him. Russ is going to the tunnel. He comes back out to talk to the fans. And I think that's another thing that kind of makes it a little more frustrating when you have that scene after a disappointing loss.
Yeah, throwing stuff is crazy. You can't do that. But I want to pivot back really quickly to the point. You mentioned the 30 points, man. But what happened in that fourth quarter of that 30-point game?
I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah. He went 0 for 4, dude. He's like I don't justify people who make it beyond the basketball. This is just pure basketball. I'm not going personal or anything at him, but Russell Westbrook
This is
is
the man.
he's like the childhood bully who just has like one speed. Like you trigger that kid, like what's the Simpson character? Nelson on The Simpsons? Like if you piss the guy off, he's going to go 1,000% at you, at you and intimidate you. But then, like, if you leave a little soap on the floor, he won't notice it because of the impulse nature, and he's just going to slip. Like that's Russell Westbrook late in games. It's like he loses his mind 48 minutes, and sometimes in the game, you just got to be calm, be present, wait for things to happen, and he's never figured out that gear of when to go, when to slow down, right? Like Chris Paul is so great at that. Russell Westbrook never figured that out. So that's the problem with Russell Westbrook. And I think we're going to transition to college basketball, nothing to do with Russell Westbrook.
Mm-hmm.
But the Final Four, we should talk about late in that Houston Duke game because that was probably one of the greatest. Oh, it was one of the greatest choke jobs in recent college basketball history. 56-42 with around 8 minutes left in the game.
Yep.
And just blown like that. John, what is your first thought?
On one side, I'm not the least bit surprised because I felt like leading to this game and the way that it looked to start with Houston's poor shooting stretch early in the first half, that Duke has been up to this point the most unbeatable team in the tournament. And I think yesterday they met their match and a Houston team, which is the best defense they're going to play. They have a ton of three-point shooting to cut these leads as a team that shot just a tick under 40% for the season from three. So when you look at Duke being up by 14 with 8 minutes to go, then up by 9 with 2 minutes to go in the game, you see these different stretches where Houston's able to get all those hustle, those power plays, all of those little loose balls, all those defensive rebounds, and then being able to hit one or two shots. They cut it to a 4-point game. And in that moment in time, we saw a few different things happen. I think for one, the fouls, which took Houston to the foul line to get the lead up by one, it was something that definitely benefited Houston. I don't agree with the over the back call on Cooper Flag. I don't think he should have
Oh, that was
called
awful. That
in
was
that moment.
awful. You
I
don't
think
call that with
the
13
ref didn't
seconds
let the
left.
game breathe. And that right there was what allowed Houston to then turn the game back into their favor. But that's not to diminish how resilient of a team they are. To have this type of comeback against a team with 3 lottery picks, all of which are freshmen, yes. But at the same exact time, you have experienced veterans like Tyrese Proctor, who in this game, in the second half, are not making those winning plays on the offensive end. So I felt like Duke's offense stalled out, and at a certain point, it was Cooper Flag and everybody else watching. And Houston's defense was so suffocating at the point of attack, and they play a lot bigger too around the rim to where they're able to help, they're able to recover. It's why I had them winning the tournament. I had them beating Maryland, who of course got knocked off. And I look at them right now in this defense, and I'm pretty confident that they're going to beat Florida because that all-around defense, to me, it's not only elite coaching, but it's an elite program. And I think they're finally due. And this is the year that they seem to be breaking through.
This game yesterday proved me a brand new rule that I'm just going to consider for the rest of my life when considering college basketball and March Madness predictions. I'm never going to pick the team that is led by freshmen ever again.
Mm-hmm.
When was the last time a freshman heavy led team won the national championship? It's happened. It's a rhetorical question, John.
It hasn't happened.
Well, Anthony Davis in 2012 was the big one. But outside of that, look at some of the greatest young college teams.
Justice Winslow was a freshman for Duke in 2015.
Oh, you're right. You're right. That Duke team in 2015. You're right.
And Chris Allen.
Billy Okafor, Justice Winslow, Tyus Jones, right? 2015 is the right answer, John. Thank you very much.
That's the first one I think of, but I'm just trying to confirm what year they were all in.
Because after that, it was like Villanova, then it was the Carolinas, and then it was, right? You can go on and on.
Mm-hmm.
The UConns.
Yeah, Quinn Cook, and Emil Jefferson were the only upperclassmen in that lineup, in that core top 5.
It's just in the modern basketball, it is just not a safe bet to bet on the teams that are led by freshmen. I mean, I think the prominent example is 2019 with Zion Williamson, RJ Barrett, Cam Reddish. That team was supposed to be
Jones.
the epitome of a super juggernaut freshman team. And
Mhm.
that team got knocked out way earlier. And then another team that got close but didn't quite get there was the Paolo Banchero team. And that same year, Gonzaga with Chet, they didn't get the job done either. And Chet was the big prospect. Obviously, UConn is or Gonzaga isn't just like a freshman team necessarily. But
Yeah.
teams like Duke right now, I mean, they were heavily reliant on freshmen. I mean, Duke, Cooper Flagg, Kama Malwak, and Konkunupu are 3 starters on that team. They have multiple high-level prospects on the bench on that team as well. And then, I mean, Tyrese Proctor's a fine player. He's not what Jalen Brunson was as an upperclassman or some of these guys who actually won championships. He's a role player, and he's probably going to be a late second-round pick or undrafted in the NBA, and he'll be a role player in the NBA too. He's a role player. So Duke was all freshmen, and late in the game, I thought when the game got really physical, really intense, little details, having to produce an offense, having to respond because Houston was starting to deliver a ton of pressure,
Yeah.
especially in the half court.
Mhm.
And I thought they were flustered by that, which is something young players often do. They get flustered when things get really tight. I mean, in modern basketball, young kids can't run a 3-man weave well. That's just where we're all right now with prospects. And they weren't executing. People were missing open shots. I mean, the only guy who I'm not going to blame for this really is Cooper Flagg, because the only guy late in the game who could score at least a
Make
little
big
bit
plays.
was Cooper Flagg, whether it was his spot of threes or getting to the rim. And he wasn't great to finish the game, but at a certain point, the pressure was too much around him where he couldn't create efficient shots consistently. So I thought it was a team that showed their immaturity late, and going forward when evaluating prospects, I think it's foolish whether you look at Duke next year with Cam Boozer or teams that are just going to be very reliant on guards. I mean, look at Kentucky the last like 10 years. They couldn't get out of the first round and they kept getting the top level young prospects. They don't win. Can you win with a young prospect? Sure, but when it's led by kids, you're not reinventing the wheel. You're not winning a championship led by all these like freshmen and 19-year-old kids, because if that was the case, I think Duke would have won this year because that was the best young team we have seen in years.
Yeah. That's a great point, and I think it goes back to that physicality that for Houston, you have a group filled with seniors and juniors. And this game, a great example is Kamal Malawak, who is supposed to be, and I think he's definitively a top 10 pick, and he's going to
Yeah.
be a valuable, productive NBA player who finishes this game with 0 rebounds. And you look at those power plays I mentioned before, you have Duke 10 offensive rebounds, Houston 15. Yesterday was an example that, like you're highlighting now, I think experience goes such a long way. And it also kind of jades my judgment a little bit when we're talking about these prospects. Cause I feel like in these March Madness runs, we see one prospect every single year where I looked at Walter Clayton in this Florida team, and
Right.
so many people have been saying it. I'm not the only person that's going to say it. But that's someone I look at would be a very productive NBA player. And a lot of people, most people do not have him being a top half of the first round type of draft pick. So I think this is where it's kind of enjoyable to see these teams that, like Houston, guys like Emmanuel Sharp and LJ Cryer are not getting that same recognition as all these Duke prospects. And to see them finally get to that mountaintop later in their college tenures, I think it's a surreal thing. I think it makes Houston the feel-good story of this tournament. I honestly, I can't see how people want to be excited to see this team in the national championship.
I mean, you look at all these teams too. I mean, Clayton is probably the biggest name in this national championship, and you just mentioned it. He's a top half first round pick at best, and
Maybe.
obviously he's fantastic. He reminds me of Quentin Grimes. Like that's the guy who I keep watching, and I'm like, yeah, that's who I see when I watch Clayton. So I get taking
Different
him for
product.
Duke product. But you look at all the Houston teams, even if you're like a casual NBA draft fan and you look at some of the rosters and the names, a lot of the names aren't that recognizable in the draft world. But what are these players? They're experienced, they're mature, they're physical, and those are all the things that teams that are, NBA draft factories, they don't consistently produce. I mean, Kentucky this year was the first time since 2019 Kentucky gotten out of the first round. So Yeah, I totally agree with you. And going to the national championship, I think I'm still going to pick Florida and what they're doing offensively right now. And I mean, this dude Clayton, bro, he's averaging over 24 this tournament. He's
Hmm.
coming off of a 34-point game, and obviously with Houston and how physical they are in the perimeter, I'm still going to take just what Florida has done this season. They were one of the deepest and most complete teams in college basketball all season, and I just think with the gear that they can get offensively, I'm going to bet on that in the national championship.
You look at Florida, and it's the same exact story. We were filled with, from top to bottom of the rotation, senior after senior after senior, transfers who have been in a lot of different spots they've had to develop. And that's where, to me, I think it can go either way, but I'm going to bank on what Houston's done. I do believe that there's something to the perimeter defense being the best matchup for Walter Clayton and having a bad shooting night. And that's ever going to happen. I know the biggest stage in the national championship, he can put on a great show, but I do believe that's going to be his toughest match.
Yeah, I think it's going to be his toughest match. I don't think he's gotten easy looks at all this tournament, and
Mhm.
he's just
Mhm.
I mean, the tough shot making has been ridiculous. Like I
Jamal
said,
Murray-esque. Pee Wee the
if you
Plug
watch
Pierre made it, that
Jamal
comparison.
Murray, that's an interesting comp. Okay. I like that. I like
I
that.
gotta credit Pee Wee for that one.
Stylistically, I still see the most Quentin Grimes. Like if people watch Quentin Grimes in Philadelphia right now, I mean, single-handedly, that guy dragged them back into the Minnesota game yesterday. And it took some bull crap Anthony Edwards shots for them to win the game. But before that, Quentin Grimes was on just some crazy crap. And that's who I see with Clayton. But yeah, it'll be a very interesting tournament. And honestly, John, I think when we look at the draft, because that's what we are, we're mainly NBA draft. I'm going to give you a list of draft prospects that played in March Madness, and you're going to tell me if their stock has risen or lowered.
Mhm. Or I might give you neutral if I feel like it stayed even keel.
Okay, perfect. So, first name up, I'm going to go with VJ Edgecombe.
VJ Edgecombe in his 2 March Madness games for his Duke and Mississippi State had 3 assists. I think looking at his outlook, a lot of it's going to be his ability to create and leverage that athleticism into all ball reps.
Mm-hmm.
Given the lack of playmaking on the offensive end, I'm going to say slight down. I'm going to say it's only been down because you're hoping to see a little bit of that in those marquee games.
I think it's slightly down for me. It's down for me because I was hoping for more just shot making in this postseason. He didn't shoot particularly well in March Madness. I
Mhm.
mean, he shot 6 for 12 the first game, great, and 3 for 8 the first game, but he didn't really take over a playoff game the way I was hoping he would. And that's kind of reopened the number 3 pick conversation for me. He wasn't bad. I mean, he averaged 15 in the tournament. That's fine. But I thought Baylor needed more from him, and they didn't get that. So
That's
next
fair.
name up. Next name up. Kama Melwak.
I'm going to say stock slightly down.
It was so bad yesterday. So he was so good in the tournament, dude. I mean, first 3 games, he shot 88% from the floor.
Yeah.
And he was getting near double doubles. How in the world do you get 0 rebounds in the final 4? How in the world is that possible? John, like does that reopen any questions about like his ability to be an enforcer in the NBA? Because that was his reputation going into this game, and he didn't enforce anything.
It's concerning given the matchup, the opponent, and also his youth. I'm not going to over exaggerate it, but yeah, that is an example of a high stakes playoff atmosphere that in the NBA you will be seeing that a lot. And to me, I do believe that there's something to a young guy needing more time to physically mature, but it does show that he might be a little more raw coming to the league. So I'm going to have to still say it's down for me, but those first few games, I felt like he was really putting himself into the conversation of top 5 picks. So I feel like it's kind of been neutral up until, of course, yesterday.
I thought he was pushing himself into the conversation for top 3 in the first couple games. He's
Mhm.
7'2". He might be taller than that. Like if you see him next to Cooper Flag, it's unreal. He's got the size, he's got the skill, he's got the physicality, good rim protector, even though the shot blocks don't represent it. But he
Mhm.
showed just in the biggest game when you're playing real grown men, he looked overwhelmed. And that's the question. For me, stock down. And I had him conversation for top 3 last week. And now I look like a fool. Like
Right.
he's lucky that he unfollowed me on Twitter because I would be after him if he did.
He
So
unfollowed you?
unfollow me on Twitter.
Come on, Malawak was following you in the first place.
Yeah, he followed me in the first place, and I was his biggest fan, so I guess I
That's
have to be his
awesome.
biggest hater now. So I
I
don't know.
guess so.
Conquanuple.
Stock up. The way that he's able to play off the ball, I think in this atmosphere, you want to see guys that are able to, in his case, that aren't great athletes, be able to make all those small little details and being able to get shots at the rim, making the right play, hitting those catch and shoot throughs. I know yesterday he wasn't great, but him and Cooper Flag were the only ones who did much of anything in that game. And
Mhm.
given how mature he is physically, the size, the shooting, that clutch gene, going to be stock up for me.
He's one of the most mature freshman players I've seen in recent years. He doesn't have like the insane tools that make me think he's ever going to be a star, but
Hmm.
I mean, when they needed him, especially in the ACC tournament, he was the MVP. He looked great. And let's just count out the last like 8 minutes of yesterday. He was great all tournament, I thought. He was literally Duke's most dependable player outside of Flag, and he might not have the same ceiling as a Malwalk, but he's going to go on an NBA team, know exactly how to play off of his star. He'll know how to defend, know how to make connective reads. I mean, he's good, man. He's good. He's somebody. If somebody took him seventh overall, I wouldn't be that mad,
Yeah.
honestly.
He
And
really profiles a good fifth or fourth starter that can fit
yeah,
off other stars.
I think he could be a 4 or a 3. That's kind of where I have him right now. And there's players who will be taken after him who have more potential, but
Mhm.
he's still really impressive. And my next player, Jeremiah Fierce.
I expected a little bit more efficiency, especially the jump shooting was kind of tough at times. The Kentucky game, I think of where he was able to get to the rim, but the biggest question with him was that outside shot. I'll have to pull up the exact numbers, but watching the inefficiency and the inconsistency, I'm going to say slightly down for me. With that inefficiency, I do think it opens a little bit of that question to a bigger long term concern.
I would say stock up because I think even though I agree with those questions, they were always there. Always there. He was never an efficient jump shooter. He had the ball in his hands a lot.
Mhm.
But we did see moments. I mean, he dropped 20 in the NCAA tournament. He shot 2 for 3 that game, so
Mhm.
not horrible. We saw flashes of somebody who, if everything goes right, could become a number 2 option. And I thought that was justified as an 18-year-old freshman with how, powerful and great in transition he is, the way he can get to the rim, even though he's
Mhm.
not a great finisher yet. I think there's a lot of talent here. And I think stock up. All right. I'll give you 2 more names because you talked about this player. Liam McNeely.
I'm gonna say stock neutral for Liam McNeely.
I'm going to say stock down because if he works in the NBA, he has to be a good shooter.
Mhm.
And in the tournament, he shot 3 for 16 from 3. And then you expand that to the conference tournament, 4 for 24. So he's a great idea. I mean, Riv compared him to a Klay Thompson type. Klay
Yeah.
Thompson not shooting 4 for 24 from 3. That's
No.
not happening. So that's going to be a big question. How good of a shooter is he? 38% from the field as a freshman. And I
Yeah.
think if he's not making shots, his value is going to go down because he doesn't have the natural foot speed to be a really good defender in the NBA. So he's kind of like right now, people say like mid first round. I wouldn't take him mid first round. I mean, mid to late, like I'll take him late 20s if you're confident the
Yeah.
shot works. But if the shot doesn't work, then what is he in the NBA? So
Yeah. I've always been lower on Liam McNeely. I kind of looked at him as a late lottery pick, and I do believe that he plays well enough off the ball and has enough size to still be a bankable, high quality role player in the NBA. The lack of shot making, it was an example of the inconsistency. But I do believe that all year you saw that 31% from 3 point land, where the theory is a little better than reality. So I think I was lower on him going in. And afterwards, it was kind of what I expected. But like you highlighted, not a single one of those games he shot 40% from the field. So you go stock down. I don't mind it, but I just think I was a lot lower on him. And if you take him the lottery, I wouldn't take him any higher than the last few spots.
I hope Minnesota doesn't take him 17. We got the Pistons pick now. So now I can talk about the draft, mid draft. But I swear,
Hmm.
I hope we don't take him at 17 because I hear what you're saying, but I think all of us thought he could shoot. Is he a better shooter than his stats? Probably, but with his other questions, is it worth banking on that high in the draft? He's draftable, but that
Mhm.
high, I'm not for that. And the last player before we transition to NBA talk, Derek Queen.
Derek Queen's up. I think this is one of the biggest March Madness risers. The final few games, and specifically that Maryland offense, when you have it's a Crab Five, is an amazing nickname, and it's all upperclassmen and Derek Queen. And he was the one in go-to moments that was consistently making plays at the end of games. And that physicality that he brings to be able to win on the glass, be a plus ball handler at that size, and at the same exact time, the finishing, the ability to get to the rim, that is a very bankable NBA skill set. And I believe that translates immediately for him. So I think Derek Queen for me is going to be a big riser.
Even in the March Madness game they lose, he dropped 27 points on 17 shots against one of the best teams in the country. That is in the national championship in Florida. In the game before that, he gets a awesome game winner off the glass.
Yep.
He has so much of Pau Gasol in his game. He has so much of Alperen Şengün, Al Jefferson. I'm talking guys who have that 6'10", 6'11" frame, just the coordination, the body control, the touch, the feel for the game. I mean, he's a dude I can see in a couple years be a top 3, top 2 player on a really good team that makes the playoffs. And how many guys can you say that in most drafts? So I think he cemented himself as somebody who deserves looks in the top 5.
Mhm. I agree with that entirely.
So that is the series that we just had. It was stock risers, stock droppers in March Madness. There's plenty of players we could have talked about, and we'll probably talk about them in the near future. But let's talk about something else that's also bankable, and that is Ja Morant being an idiot. Being an idiot. And Ja Morant, so just to update everybody, he hasn't gotten suspended. I'm not saying that idiocy. That's not what happened. But Ja Morant a couple days ago, he gets falsely criticized for, a gun gesture, which was more of a reciprocation than it was him responding, right? And
Mhm.
then what happened right after was that happened. The NBA investigated it because Ja Morant doesn't deserve the benefit of the doubt. And then a couple days later, he does the same gesture on national television to completely mock the situation. And I thought that was such a bad look for the NBA. So, John, let's just have a real conversation about Ja Morant. Can you build around the guy?
There's two different sides of the story. I, for one, am a fan of Ja Morant. Moments like this do show a bit of immaturity and kind of being a little bit headstrong, where Ja Morant looks at the way that the league has responded to his celebration and, quite frankly, doesn't see an issue with it. I do believe that as a franchise face, you have an obligation to not put yourself in this type of situation where the Grizzlies have been a young team. Since Taylor Jenkins came in, have been one of the youngest teams in the NBA. And we have seen routinely, while Ja Morant has been an elite playoff performer, someone who's going up against Rudy Gobert and Steph Curry and outplaying them in the playoffs, we forget that in 2023, before 2022, before Ja Morant gets hurt in the first 3 games of that series versus the soon-to-be Finals MVP, he is playing better than Steph Curry. That is what Ja Morant's playoff reputation has been for the better part of his young career. But at the same exact time, there is an emotional immaturity to this Grizzlies team, I think, defensive aspect where Taylor Jenkins, younger coach, the team is very young, the front office is young, and you see that immaturity blend through the entire organization where the leadership structure is a bit combative. I believe that with the Taylor Jenkins firing recently, there's been a microscope on this team, and this team has really been the focus of a lot of attention in the NBA negatively. And when you look at them in recent years, I think that has oftentimes been their detractor when you look at that Lakers series 2 years ago in 2023. And even this year, where they've started to have a second half of the season fall off, that gets in the way of this team leveling up into contention. Now, on the court, I do believe that this team is missing an extra gear. Their offense this year has been top 10 at 6 in offensive rating. They've seen development from Jaren Jackson, Santi Aldama, and others. But I believe there is a certain point in time where Ja Morant needs to recognize that as the franchise face, You can't put yourself in this negative type of situation where now this team is in a dark cloud, where the media is putting an expectation, it's putting a stigma on you. And as someone who's looking to be a true franchise face that can take you to the conference finals, let alone the finals, to take you to the conference finals, something guys like Trae Young have done that people don't consider top 10. So I think the Grizzlies have, in many different ways, got in their own way. And Ja Morant right now is showing a bit of that young, brash immaturity. And that's coming from someone who looks at him as a top 25 player at his best. And this year we have not quite seen that. As of late, he's played better, but I think this is a tough situation. I quite frankly don't think that he should be putting this himself in this type of light.
I love I love a lot of what you said, but John, you didn't answer my question. Can you trust building around Ja Morant?
You can build around Ja Morant. He is someone that's gotten this team to a number 2 seed in back-to-back years. When he's been healthy, they've routinely been an elite regular season team in a small market in Memphis where it is tough to attract free agents and not a lot of stars want to go there. Jimmy Butler this year said, "I don't want to play there. I want to go to Golden State to play with Steph Curry." This franchise
How much of
works
that
from a
question?
talent deficit, and Ja Morant has been the one who has uplifted them and been a high-end floor raiser. So can you build around Ja Morant? The question is easy to me. You can build around him.
If the answer is you want to build around a team that's going to be a headache that will make the second round in the playoffs,
Headache,
and
they've been on average a 50-win team when he's healthy.
great. What I'm saying when I say headache, I'm talking from a morale standpoint.
Okay.
There had to be a headache when they fired their head coach, right? I mean, there
Mhm.
had to be some sort of headache or they wouldn't have fired the guy at all. And Memphis said, I don't care what you think, Ja Morant. You might like Taylor Jenkins. He's gone. He's gone. What are you going to do about it? That's what Memphis said. They know they won 50 games 2 years ago, 3 years ago. They know they're about to win high 40s, maybe 50 at this point of the year. But they also see other things about Ja Morant. It's time for Ja Morant to grow up. And he's had every single opportunity to grow up as a franchise player. It didn't take one suspension to say, you know what, maybe what I'm doing is not very smart. And then he gets suspended again for the same nonsense, this time way worse. And then after he gets injured, and even though that's an injury, it allowed that reputation to kind of flood his name to the point where he goes from a future face of the league to being forgotten. And then he comes back this year, doesn't look great this year. He kind of becomes a little laughing stock until he starts playing great after the deadline. And he has all of these opportunities for character development by being humbled by what he has lost. And he has taken that and he has mocked it. He's mocked it. And on top of that, he goes from mocking it to somehow playing victim about it. He goes into a post-game conference and he's like, all of this stuff that happens to me, I just laugh at it and move on. This is your fault. Every single chance you've been given, the league has wanted to make you the face of the league. Oh, Ja Morant, I'm so sorry. Here, only an 8-game suspension when you might deserve more. Oh, wait, now we have to really put the foot down on you, Ja Morant, because he continues being an idiot. And then the year after, when I think probably his overall image should give him a look like maybe I'm doing something wrong. That's not his thought. It's look at what they're doing to me. Why is everybody looking at me differently about guns, even though I've been suspended twice for gun-related things? That is where the Ja Morant problem is. And you also added the fact he's injury prone. He's never played more than 67 games. We don't see small guards who can't shoot win championships. And you mentioned it, John. He's a top 25 player. He's not a top 10 player, top 15 player. And there's a rule in my life. There's certain girls in your life you can put up more with because they are jaw-dropping gorgeous or they're jaw-dropping brilliant. Some girls like that you just put up with. Ja Morant is not one of those girls you put up with. He's a talented dude, really good, has the upside to be a top 15 player. He's not LeBron. He's not Wemby. Like, Victor Wembanyama could do some crazy stuff, and I would still bet on that guy. You know? But Ja Morant, he's not in that tier. And he still brings like 10 times the headache of Victor Wembanyama does. And he brings 10 times the maintenance. And even Memphis is saying, even though that city loves him, we don't care what you think. It's your time to just put it together and follow us. there's base to the idea Memphis might trade Ja this summer if this year goes wrong, because there's a lot of headache that goes in that organization.
This is a frustrating topic to still discuss because no one wants to have this conversation. And kind of building back on what I was getting to, Ja Morant needs to take responsibility. I think his perception that the league is out to get him, they made him a villain, quite frankly, is a little bit immature. But what you highlighted before, the fact that he is a career 31% three-point shooter, he has not gone back to 34% since 2022. It's been at 30, 27, 30. But this is somebody who I give a benefit of the doubt to because in these postseasons, which are smaller sample sizes, those key moments, that's where he's played his best basketball. His three-point shooting goes from 31 to 36%. And his rim pressure, his finishing, his playmaking, that all pops at an elite level to where, all right, if you're making 36% of your threes, you're giving me 27 points a game in the postseason on very good efficiency. And along with that, 9 assists. And they've built a insanely strong foundation on the defensive end. It's why they're the second best defense in the NBA this year, Jaren Jackson as the focal point. So I look at, and I'm wrong. They're at the go back to the right season. This year I'm cutting that out. All right. Anyways, they built a strong defensive foundation with Jaren Jackson Jr. So I do believe that people hyper fixate on the regular season. And this year, Ja Morant hasn't been a top 25 player. As of late, he's playing closer to that level. But I look at this in the perspective on the biggest moments. Ja Morant has consistently been a top end playoff performer. And that's why I give him more benefit of the doubt when it comes to building around him. The only demerit that you could really have is the fact that the last 2 games he played 56 games. This year he's going to miss over
The only demerit, John,
on the floor as a
on the
player.
but when you're a franchise player, you're representing an organization that's worth at least $3 billion.
Yeah.
That's when you're building around the player. That's what you're representing. You're representing a company, an organization. You're the face of a brand. And when a player like Ja Morant is somebody who people don't respect off the floor, that hurts his value. So if he's not like this mega star on the floor, he can play. No one can deny that. But when he's not a mega star on the floor, is that a headache worth having?
It's a valid question. The Grizzlies are also playing at a pace of a 49-win team. In this Western Conference, they've been in the hunt this year, but I believe the whole season long they've needed an extra gear to their offense. That is looking to upgrade with another star alongside him and Jaren Jackson. And I do believe that is what would get them into that tier of contenders in the Western Conference. Until then, they're going to be in that bubble of teams from third to the seventh best team in the Western Conference, which, given how competitive it is, you can say it's good enough in a small market for a team that is looking to establish themselves. And I think there's a lot of other things going on around him. There have been mistakes by the front office that don't get magnified. But as the franchise face, like you highlighted, you are representing a company, you're an employee of that company, you need to do the right thing, basically represent not just the team and the city, but also the fan base and everything that it represents. So I understand the off the court concerns, but I tend to, with athletes, give more credence to the on-court production. And I do believe that when you ask this question, can you build around Ja Morant? We start to, I think, lose sight of how good he's been at his peak. And I'm looking for him to get back to that this postseason. If he has a strong playoff series, and hopefully they're able to win a playoff series, so we get 2 of them, I think that's where we're going to get a better understanding of what Ja truly is and how high the ceiling is with him. Because we know the floor is going to be very high. It's a matter of can he get into that tier of players who are going to get to the finals. And I think that's what he's looking to prove right now.
Man, I just want to make this point also. Ja Morant's played a lot better the last month or so.
Mm-hmm.
This is also Memphis's worst basketball.
They're 5-5 in the last 10 games.
5-5. Let's expand that to the last 25 games. They were, I don't know the exact record, but I know post All-Star break, they were at one point 8-11, and then they lost again. And then they won 2. So they're definitely sub 500 post March or post All-Star break.
Mm-hmm.
And they beat Detroit, but Detroit didn't have a healthy Ja Morant in that game. So even when Ja Morant's been the most productive this year, it's not that Memphis, even though on the floor they're better with him, he's not making this like Nikola Jokic level difference.
No.
And I just like I said, no one's denying Ja Morant can play. Nobody's denying that. Nobody's denying he has a really good feel for the moment. We saw that the other day against Miami. But is Ja Morant so great that you can withstand all the other headache and the other unreliability that comes along with Ja Morant? For me, the answer is very much an emphatic no. So I think that's a good way to end that fun Ja Morant discussion. And let's move on to the last part of the show. This is a pretty fun topic, I would say. We are going to look at this 2024 NBA draft class, the one that was labeled the worst since 2000. And we're just going to reflect on it a little bit, give some discussion, but also give a 2024 NBA redraft. And John, do you want the first pick or do you want the second pick?
I'll take the second pick.
You'll
I'll
take
let you have the honor of making a very tough decision at one.
It's a tough decision because there's like 5 different options of where you could go.
Mm-hmm.
And this is hard because I love the way Zachary Versace has played the last couple months to the point where I think he was a worthy number 1 overall pick. But with the first pick in the 2024 NBA redraft, I'm going to take Stephon Castle. Stephon Castle isn't a great fit on this particular team. Trae Young, Dyson Daniels, and Stephon Castle. Daniels and Castle is a little bit redundant.
Yeah.
And that's the question. But I think Stephon Castle is going to make multiple all-star teams in this league. And I don't think Zachary Versace is going to make a lot of all-star teams, even though I think he's going to be a pretty good player. And I'm still not entirely sure this Hawks team, this roster construction is endgame regardless. I don't think Trae Young is a number 1 player on a championship team. So I'm going to take the best player in the draft, and I'm going to figure it out later. It's not a great fit now, but I think the Hawks, if you put a gun to their head and said, is this core endgame? I don't think they say yes. So I still am going to take the best player because they don't have a player great enough to say, well, you can't take him.
Yeah, that's a great point. I believe that Stephon Castle is the most projectable ceiling of any player in this draft to become a star player. When I was making my list, I did not put into account the team drafting because I believe that would make things pick to pick really tough because now you're just focusing on fit. But I'm prioritizing here the ranking of rookies based off of both their rookie production and their long term outlook. So there's still guys that have, well, it's very high on coming to the draft, like Reed Shepard, who have not played well as rookies that I still believe in because it has only been 1 year and they haven't had all the opportunity to prove themselves. Akin to somebody like, say, Stephon Castle is on a lottery team, giving him a ton of opportunity to develop. So my number 2 was Zachary Zache, who was the original first overall pick. And his shooting in the second half of the season has immediately showcased high-end to elite complementary skills. Defensively, at 6'9", he has all the tools to be a strong point of attack defender, and then he has all the chops of playing well off of other stars. So if I'm going to look at this from the Wizards' perspective, now I'm saying, all right, would I rather take Montez Buzelis, who has maybe more potential as an on-ball creator? And I think that's where we lose sight of, for me at least, the right way to rank these rookies based off of the rookie season. So I'm just going to look at this. Zachary Sachet, number 2. I think his skill set's a lot more reliable and transferable long term because you have more confidence in his 3-point shooting going up. Now, the guys who come after him are pretty similar, though. So I think it's a very narrow line from, say, 2, 4, or 5.
I think it's also worth mentioning. I said I think Castle is a better upside pick. I still think Versace's upside is still understated because he's really tall. I mean, he's huge on an NBA floor. They say he's 6'8", 6'9". Like, I think he might be taller. I don't know. He looks big on a court. His shot is good. His feel is good. He can defend. I mean, like Michael Porter Jr. signed $200 million, and I think Versace is going to be better than
A
Michael
more complete player.
Yeah. I think that's his comp on offense, and I think he's going to provide A-minus level defense and probably more playmaking instincts than MPJ. So Versace is somebody who can sign, I think, a couple $100 million contract someday still. So I think his upside's still underplayed, and I liked your pick. And now the third pick is interesting because nobody's really like for sure going to play on Houston, right? But with the third overall pick, I'm I'm going to take Alex R. And Alex R is interesting because I just think, it's very debated how much he can contribute to winning right now. He's inefficient offensively, things of that nature. But Houston just has a lot of those complementary wings. I felt
Yeah.
like if I threw in a Montes Bazelis, he's just kind of buried in there.
Yeah.
And I think Houston is a team that could use upside with this pick, but also use some big man versatility with Şengün. And Alex Sarr is somebody you can start, put on the bench, put at the 4, put at the 5. He adds a rim protecting element that could hide Şengün on defense. And I think he long term has the skill foundation to really become a really, really, really good player and somebody who wouldn't be able to not complement their offense. Like eventually, I can see him spacing the floor for Şengün. I can see him being a connective playmaker. I think Evan Mobley is a really good aspirational conversar, and I think that's somebody he can model his game after. And that's somebody who I think, that archetype could really fit Houston.
Absolutely. And the big thing with Alex Sarr is that, like you highlighted, the efficiency as a scorer is not there, but there's little pieces of a complementary player on offense that if he can put together as a short roll decision maker, you can put him in three different spots, whether it's off the ball, a lob threat, and of course there as well. So I'm pretty optimistic that even if he's not going to be a very efficient big, he's going to serve a lot of different roles in the offensive end. Number four for me is very tough. I'm torn between two players, Mataz Buzelis and Jared McCain, because Jared McCain in the 23 games that he played was the best rookie in this class. His
Yeah.
shooting was immediately elite. He had it from mid range, 3 point, off the catch, off the dribble. And at 6'2", I had some questions if his size, athleticism, and versatility would really hold him back at the NBA level. We didn't really have a large enough sample to really determine that. So with the fourth over, number four, for me, I am going to lean with a more versatile player from very high on. That's going to be Matez Buzelis. I believe his 3 point shooting will only continue to improve. And that was what had his draft stock fall from the best prospect in this class to someone who the Bulls, a team that not too many people like their young core, was
Mhm.
able to land in the later half of the lottery at pick number 11. So for them to get a player who has ball handling and at the same time shooting upside as elite defensive upside as a help defender, he gives me some Andre Kirilenko, AK-47
I like that.
shades on the defensive end. But on the offensive end, I believe he can grow into someone who's giving you an efficient 17 a game who can and I apologize for losing my voice, who can both play off the dribble, play off the catch, and has a ton of athleticism to play above the rim. So number four for me would be Matas Buzelis. I'd have him number three on my big board.
And I think you're downplaying his upside. I think if I had to pick somebody who has the most pure potential in this draft class, I would take Montes Bazelis in that because his handle at that size is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And he has the foundation to eventually become a shooter. He's a top 5 percentile athlete. He's huge and he's got this mental wiring that I find really intriguing. He's got that FU to him that
Mhm.
I think is just going to be so beneficial for him long term. And he has the personality of somebody who I think can become a pillar on a really good team. Will he get there? We'll see, but I think he's shown that he has the it factor to be a stud. So I think in San Antonio, that's a really fun pick. Now the pick at 5 for me is pretty easy. You mentioned this player, number 5, I'm going to take Jared McCain. He's going to Detroit, and people will be like, "Oh, that's not a great fit." There's Jaden Ivey, there's Malik Beasley and Tim Hardaway Jr. now, but
We'll
none of
see
those
Tim
guys
Hardaway
are
after why.
why you pass on
See
Jared
ya.
McCain.
See
None
ya.
of them, including Jaden Ivey.
Yeah.
Jaden Ivey's shown good signs, but he hasn't shown yet he's a winning player. I mean, Detroit has really popped since he's been hurt. He hasn't been a great compliment to
Ivy
Cade.
was very good though before getting hurt. Let's not forget he was playing his best
He was
basketball,
productive.
playing well for the team.
Detroit was floating around 500, right? And after he got hurt, I'm not saying it's because he got hurt, but Detroit has been able to do just fine without him. Jared McCain, someone who could really space the floor next to Cade Cunningham, because they have all of that athleticism already. I don't think they would really struggle with having a 6'2" shooting guard. And I just think he was the most productive rookie when he played. He probably wins rookie of the year if he plays. So I think Jared McCain in Detroit is a really good fit.
Yeah, I mean, it's the perfect fit. And like you were saying, I would immediately move off Tim Hardaway Jr. I mean, that's probably the one thing we don't talk about with the Pistons turnaround is that they traded Quinn Grimes and 2 first-round picks for him, and Quinn Grimes is clearly a better player to me and also
Yeah.
over 5 years younger. But now number 6 for me is funny because I feel like you have a laundry list of bigs who play different roles who all have kind of unknown potential. Some have been injured, some haven't played a whole lot. And here I'm going to take a bit of a jump with a player who was taken at 15 and have Khalil Ware rise up 9 spots. Now, the Hornets are at this spot. This is a team that has Mark Williams, a ton of injury concerns, unfortunately, to where their new front office is looking to move off of him because they don't want to pay him to potentially not be available in a couple of years. So, Khalil Ware stylistically to me reminds me a lot of Mark Williams on the offensive end because he has that insane reach. He's a great athlete. He has really good mobility and foot speed for a player at that size. And at the same time, he has the potential to step out and be a consistently solid 3-point shooter. I know he's only making 32% this year, but the touch is there. And I feel like with young bigs, it's really tough to project what their true defensive ceiling is. But when you watch him as a rim protector, he covers so much space in drop coverage, being
Mm-hmm.
able to both tag the screen, get back on lobs, and contest mid-range shots. There is a ton of upside to me of him becoming an all-league defender of possession by possession. He's able to lock in that side of the floor. And playing for Eric Spoelstra in Miami, I believe that he's going to be one of the best picks of this draft that's going to age perfectly in the right spot. Spot is an important destination is a big thing with Chloe developing, but I do believe that when we're looking at this draft class a couple of years from now, I'm going to have a similar outlook. He is the best big man to me in this draft class, and having him at number 6 would kind of be a dream for LaMelo Ball in Charlotte.
Who would you take for long term, Alex Sarr or Khalil Ware?
I would say Khalil. I believe defensively he is a more reliable foundation as a true 5. Alex Sarr to me, I believe, can be a big piece as a complementary, awesome help defender. And specifically his rim protection to me, I think it makes him more suited as a 4, whereas I believe Chloe Ware can play the 4 and 5 defensively. And there's a little bit more flexibility for him to guard true 5s. And on the offensive end, I do believe Chloe Ware has an advantage and an edge as well. So I believe it's tough to tell right now because of how raw Alex Sarr is, but I would take Chloe Ware over him.
I still would take Sarr just by a little bit, just because I think the age gap I think is something to worth mentioning. I also think that I think Sarr has a little more on-ball potential than Khalil Ware, and I think that Sarr. I still think he has the foundation to figure out the rebounding, and if he figures out the rebounding, I'm not worried about him playing the 5 or a 4 because he's got the foundation to be a modern 5. He's got the versatility, and I still think he's probably. I think he and Bazelis have the best just physical tools in the class to build on. So Khalil Ware falling to 15 was always dumb. He was such a victim of people saying he was lazy and didn't care. And then Miami, of all people, pick him. If Miami took him, I guarantee that was a stupid narrative. So I said at draft night, why did the league let Khalil Ware's talent fall to Miami? And now it's looking like he's going to be a really good player in the league. And with the 7th overall pick, there's a lot of good options, I still think. Like, there's still good players available. You have to think about it a little bit, but I still would go with Donovan Clingan at 7. I still would. I don't think that Robert Williams or DeAndre Ayton are long-term solutions. And Donovan Clingan as a rookie was top 5 in blocks. When he plays, he's unbelievably productive. He had a 2020 game early in the year when he started. He is an amazing rim protector, somebody who I would love in Charlotte too. And I just think that the rim protection, the deterrence, he's by far the best in the draft at that. He's got
Mhm.
good feel, and I think he's got some, sense of a jumper long term. I think he's going to be a really good starter.
Yeah, he reminds me so much of Brook Lopez in the defensive end, where you can project an elite defensive big. And that for a lot of teams in this spot in the second half or in
Mhm.
this bottom half, a lot of teams, they desperately need that rim protection. So I believe the next step for him is like you highlighted, being able to add a little bit more to the offensive end, whether it's as a floor spacer or if he can step out. And that's been a big question for him dating back to his time in school. Now, with the number 8 overall pick, I believe is where I'm currently slated.
The Spurs had the pick, so redrafts, I just keep the same team there.
Just
I,
want to make sure I have the right number. For
yep.
me, I would go with Jalen Wells, who had a very strong start to the year, quiet second half. To me, has filled out as a very well-rounded wing who can not only play off the dribble, a solid enough shooter, but just a respectable enough defender to where there's not really a weakness in his game. I believe he has enough skills at a say B minus to B level. And I believe for a player like him, coming out of Washington and Simona State was completely overlooked moving to the draft. Steps in as a rookie, immediately shooting 36% from three and starting on a team that in the first half of the year is a top four seed in the Western Conference. He's going to be overlooked because he's not the most flashy athlete in this class. He's also older. He's a 21-year-old, and that did parlay into his draft stock falling to the 39th overall selection. But when you talk about wing players in this class, he's the most polished. He was the most NBA ready, and he's already producing. So to me, I feel very comfortable at Jalen Wells around this floor of 8 to as high as 5.
I think long term, I would be shocked if he's a top 8 player in the draft, but he's one of those players. He kind of started great. He's kind of fallen off recently, the last 28 games or so. I question the upside still, but he's somebody who fills a need. He can defend. He can hit threes. And I think he'll always be able to do that. Maybe in like a Jay Crowder type sense, I can see that. So I think it's a good pick. I think he's a top 5-ish rookie, and I think at some point there will be guys who surpass him. But at this point in time, I don't have an issue. And plus, Memphis or San Antonio, Bazelis and Wells. I mean, talking about filling out the wing depth and number 9 overall. So Memphis still has this pick, and they had, I would say, 2 strong rookies. Nobody's denying that. And it's tough to really say that you would make a change here, but this is hard. There's some really good rookies we haven't mentioned. Okay, I'm going to be a wuss, and I'm still going to take Zach Edey here, just because for what they needed. And I mean, this team needed a center so bad, and he's been
Yep.
productive as a rookie. And I think his size and his stamina, I think he's going to be a long-term NBA player.
Yeah, he reminds me a lot if he can, and this is a tough comparison because he's been so good this year, one of the most improved centers. If he can get more opportunity, he reminds me a ton of Ivica Zubac, especially offensively with their touch, footwork, and they have a little bit more athleticism than people would expect for a player at that size. Their
Mhm.
stamina, I think, is a very key thing because people expected Zach Gee to be this total brute who can't get up
Yeah.
and down the floor, where he can. And I felt like for Memphis this year, it was a selection based off of fit and necessity and not necessarily upside. But I look at Zach Edey and his ability to score within 10 feet at that size, and that's something which long term could fill him out into that Ivica Zubac's role. I think defensively is where Zubac is underestimated. I think that's where Edey's not quite as complete or
Yeah.
polished, but I don't hate that pick at all. And how about Memphis having 2 guys back to back in the 8 and 9 slots? Now, number 10 for me, I'm gonna go with someone who hasn't played quite as much. That's gonna be Rob Dillingham. He is someone that has gotten spurts of opportunity here and there in Minnesota. I believe that when we're talking about guards in this class, talked about Jerry McCain and Stephon Castle, and after those two, I firmly believe Dillingham and the player who I was highest on, Reed Shepard, are the 2 guys that I'm very confident in. Weren't the most productive rookies, weren't given the most opportunity because they're playing on 2 deep playoff teams. But in Dillingham's case, you're trusting him to be a tough, creative ball handler that has good complementary value off the ball as a shooter, but he's also someone who can put the ball in his hands, and he could be a 6-man of the year caliber player in the short term. I believe long term, you're looking at a starting guard who offensively can really fill out perfectly next to a number 1, and Minnesota has that in Anthony Edwards. So I look at him as a strong second guard, and I believe that his draft stock will move up a lot if people don't have him in their lottery at least. I think it would be crazy to not have him there because he's done well with opportunity. He's been efficient.
He's really gifted. He's highly gifted. And I think if we're just going to long term rank guys in this draft, I would have him higher than 10. It's just hard with really
Me
small
too.
guards
Yep.
because, why would you pair him with Ja Morant? Right? So he could be higher. And he's had his confidence kind of shaken in the last month. I think he's kind of struggling with the pressure of, the limited opportunity because he's playing on a really deep team. And I think eventually his opportunity will come. And I think his upside is still ridiculously high, like a
Hmm.
Darius Garland type upside. So I think that's in there. And I think if a lot of players played in Minnesota, even players who've been productive, they probably wouldn't have the same ethos as they do because Minnesota, if Terrence Shannon played in Washington, is he a rookie of the year candidate? Right? Like, we saw him drop 25 against the Lakers when they needed him, or 20 against the Jazz right after. So it's just when you're a rookie in this draft and you're not a top pick and you're on a good team, you're just not going to play that much. Look at Reed Shepard. He's a top 3 pick. I think he can play still. Houston doesn't need him. That's just the nature of teams trying to win.
Exactly. And you look at the players taken around him, Reece Shea, and all of these guys are on lottery teams. 1, 3, or 1, 2, and 4. Alex Sarr, Stephon Castle. They're getting all the opportunity. And people poke at the one role players that earn his minutes. And if he's not playing at a high level, they're not going to give him that grace that his contemporaries are gifted because they're playing on 20-win teams. So that's why people may look at this and say, how is Reed Shepard maybe going to be in your top 14? Or how is Rob Dillingham going to be in there? But a lot of it is opportunity based.
Exactly. And pick 11, speaking of Reed Shepard, I'm going to take Reed Shepard right here at 11.
Nice.
So I still think this dude could be a stud. He the other day in 9 minutes hit 5 threes. He can still shoot, everybody. He can still shoot. He started the other week, dropped 25, and I think his ceiling's really high. We just mentioned it. I mean, Houston's playing Fred VanVleet a lot, and they have all of these athletic wings. Why would you play 2 6-foot guys? So Houston, I think, is dealing with that, similar to how Minnesota has Mike Conley. So Conley and Dillingham, when you have all of these wings, it's a
Yeah.
similar thing. Rasashe, speaking of your topic earlier, is probably the only guy I'm like, he probably plays wherever he goes because he's a big wing.
Yep.
But I mean, I think Shepard's upside is still there. And I think in Chicago, you're playing next to Giddey, which I think could be a solid compliment because Giddey has the size to kind of cancel that out. Shepard can shoot, he can play off of ball handlers. So I think it's a good upside pick at 11.
Very much. Now, with the number 12 overall spot, this is the part of the draft where you're projecting. A lot of these players have either somewhat produced and have been inefficient, or they haven't produced, and you're very optimistic on them
Yeah.
because of your outlook overall on them as a player. Now, I just saw one player who I left off my list, and I think he might be the highest floor of anyone available. He's 23 years old. He plays on a playoff team in the Western Conference. And I'm going to go with him. I'm going to go with this player. That's Dalton Connect with the number 12 pick. This would be for the Oklahoma City Thunder. I just want to make sure I had the right number. Dalton Connect had a lot of adversity this year. Go to the Lakers, which is one of the biggest markets in the NBA, and you're
Yeah.
immediately expected to contribute on a team that doesn't have a whole lot of depth. So you're thrown into the fire. And with that, he has been just as good as advertised for someone that was taken outside the lottery and was supposed to be likely a top 10 pick, given the lack of a really established top end in this draft class. So far this year, 37% from 3 point land, 60% on twos as a good cutter, solid off ball mover. And then what do you know? After he's playing his best basketball, he's a part of a trade to go to Charlotte. It's then rescinded because of Mark Williams not passing his physical. I understand he's an older prospect at 23. Doesn't have the highest upside in this class. Like you highlighted for Jalen Wells, someone who maybe won't be a top 8 prospect when it's all said and done.
Yeah.
The case might be similar here at Dalton Connect, but I think especially for a team like Oklahoma City, you want to get an established complementary player. A player like Connect would really make a lot of sense for most teams looking to compete because they're getting that immediate value who can play off the ball. And most importantly, he has solid size at 6'6". So I'm pretty comfortable with him being anywhere from the 11 to 14 range.
OKC is also a good fit. You get a big wing who can shoot on OKC. I mean, they have enough of those, but you can never have too many. So I think that was a good pick by you.
Thank you. A diet Cam Johnson.
Yep, that's true too. And pick 13, Sacramento has 13, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go with a Jazz rookie, and that is Kyle Filipowski. I'm
Nice.
going to take at 13. He's had a really good rookie year. I mean, almost 10 points a game, 50% shooting, making his threes. And he's one of the most unique bigs because he's huge. He can dribble the ball, he can hit threes, highly versatile. I'm sure his girlfriend would love for him to stay in Utah, but, in Sacramento, you play him next to Sabonis and the playmaking and the shooting. And I just think he has so much potential that I think it's a good pick.
Yeah, he's really stood out. Unfortunately, he's playing on a Utah team. There's no one who's established you're going to build around, and it's a motley crew of all these young players. They're thrown into this jumbo. It's like that terrible soup where you have 17 different assortments. You put it all in, and there's some really nice things in there. But within that mess, Kyle Filipowski's been the one who's come out, and Isaiah Collier as well, who have really been huge bright spots for Indiana, Utah. Pardon my huge voice crack there. It's been a tough day for me on that
Okay.
side of the floor. Now, with the last pick, because I'm assuming we're just doing lottery here. Um, this to me is a pretty easy selection. A player who people expect to be a very raw prospect coming into the NBA was Yves Misi. He comes to New Orleans, and people are thinking maybe Daniel Tice would star on that team. But Yves this year has really been the most underappreciated rookie in the NBA, where everything's been a mess for the Pelicans. But he has been a positive, both as a nice lob threat, someone who's an energetic defensive big. I believe sliding him here were the Portland Trailblazers originally took Donovan Clinton at 7, of course. And this mock draft, we had him going a little bit earlier to a different team. So I look at getting an Yves Misi in there. You have DeAndre Ayton, who deals with some injury issues, not on the floor as much. Rob Williams barely played the last couple of years. So you get Yves Misi in, I believe, is a solid pick, and he has done a very good job in a tough spot this year. So I believe he would be pretty productive, both playing off of those guards and taking a lot of threes, an offensive rebounder, and also being that versatile defensive big with Tamani Kamara and Danny Villa.
He has upside that I think is really untapped into.
Yep.
And like I agree with you. I think it's a good fit at 14, but also he's somebody who he's got good hands. And he can't shoot right now. He's not that skilled, but sometimes you just bet on dudes who have good hands.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a world where he figures out the jump shot. I think there's a world where he has more wiggle on the ball than people think. And if
Mm-hmm.
that's the case, stock way up because he's already productive as a rookie, high level athlete, good defender already. And, he's getting reps on a New Orleans team, which a lot of rookies aren't, but
Yeah.
the talent's really high level. And you look at this 2024 draft, John, and it's not the best draft in the world, but we said it during the draft process. There's a lot of good players in this draft.
Yeah.
And there's a handful of guys that we could mention just about, still being quality. We didn't mention Ron Holland. We didn't mention, okay, Saloon's horrible. Cody Williams isn't good. But you go down the list.
Saloon's raw, so I'll give him a little bit there.
Bob Carrington's still there.
Yep. AJ
Um,
Johnson played nice.
AJ Johnson, ton of upside. I
Deron
mean,
Holmes, I liked a lot. Tore his Achilles in summer league, and I believe he could be super productive as a 6-man at Jokic.
Isaiah Collier,
Oh,
I think the best
that
passer in the draft. Ryan Dunn can play. Terrence Shannon Jr. can play. And then you look at Mogbo in Toronto. He's shown good signs. You go down the list. New York Knicks
yeah.
fans really like Tyler Kolek. There's a
Yeah.
lot of good players in this draft. I mean,
AJ Mitchell. I mean, UC Santa
John Mitchell,
Barbara,
he could play.
very
Yeah,
good backup in Oklahoma City.
this is one of the deeper drafts. Quentin Post on the Warriors, nailing 47% of his threes. I mean, it's
We've
Brian
named
James
close
is
to 20
doing
players.
what?
We've named close to 20 players,
Yeah.
all of which have clear-cut skill sets to translate at the NBA level.
Bronny James is cooking in the G League. I mean, so
Yep.
there's a lot of guys in this draft. So even like Jamal Sheed, I like. So there's a lot of names in this draft, and it's not going to have the next LeBron probably, even though 2013 is the most similar comp to the top of this draft. But even that draft had Giannis, right? So who knows? It's not
Oladipo.
looking. Yep, true. It's not looking like this will be an elite draft at the top, but there's a lot of good players.
Absolutely, and I apologize for my lighting over here. I've had a issue all day, whether it's my voice cracking or the lighting. So apologize to the viewers for putting up with that. I made a mistake. I believe you did take Donovan Clinton at 7 for the Blazers, and I mixed
Oh,
that up with the pick
I didn't
before.
mention. Oh, wait. Oh, that's what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah, 'cause I mentioned I was like, the Trailblazers took Clinton at 7 in the original draft, and they're not gonna do it here because they took him earlier when you took
Yeah.
him at that same exact spot with that same exact team. But I did send you a recap if you'd like to go over it real quick and
Sure. For
make
real.
that into a short form clip.
Sure. With the first pick in the 2024 NBA Redraft, the Hawks take Stephon Castle instead of Zachary Versace.
With the second overall pick, the Washington Wizards will select Zachary Risachet.
With the third overall pick, the Houston Rockets take Alex Sarr.
With the fourth overall pick, the San Antonio Spurs will select Matas Budelis.
With the fifth pick, the Detroit Pistons take Jared McCain.
With the sixth pick, the Charlotte Hornets will select Khalil Ware.
With the seventh overall pick, the Portland Trail Blazers still select Donovan Clingan.
With the eighth pick, the Spurs will take Jalen Wells.
With the ninth pick, Memphis also still takes Zach Edey.
With the 10th pick, the Utah Jazz will select Rob Dillingham.
With the 11th overall pick, the Houston Rockets. With the 11th overall pick, the Chicago Bulls take Reed Shepherd. Red. Same color.
With the 12th overall pick, the Oklahoma City Thunder will select Dalton Knecht.
With the 13th overall pick, the Sacramento Kings take Kyle Filipowski.
And rounding out the lottery, the Portland Trailblazers will get a second big and select Ves Misi. Moving on from 8 most likely in this scenario, and hypothetically, it would make a decent amount of sense. And prioritizing Donovan Clinton and Ves Misi for the future.
So that was our 2024 NBA redraft. John, what are some of your just biggest thoughts? Because I just told you like the depth of this draft. What are some other thoughts you have regarding it?
This is a class that I believe, like every other, is going to produce one All-Star. And if I had to take a shot in the dark, I believe that Stephon Castle and Matas Buzelis will be the two ones in this draft class that make it multiple times. Not a one-time appearance, but can be contributors that you'll kind of see frequently in the game. Now, it's not to say that they're guaranteed to be all-stars, but in terms of the potential to become one, I see it with both of them.
And I see multiple people who could be all-stars. I still think Alex Sarr can be an all-star in the future. I think Versace could, there's players who could make the all-star game. You go down the line, like I think Dillingham has that potential and Khalil Ware has that potential. A lot of guys have that potential. Now it's a matter of which players actually put it together. But it kind of reminds me of the 2016 draft where Malcolm Brogdon and Dario Saric are the best rookies, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But then when it really comes down to time, a Pascal Siakam emerges. Jaylen Brown finally puts it together.
Jamal Murray breaks out.
Jamal Murray breaks out. And then it just looks entirely different. I think this draft is going to look so different 5, 6, 7 years down the road compared to how it looks right now.
Well said.
And that is going to do it for episode 22 of Objectively Biased. We thank you, as always, for listening to the show and hearing our typical banter. And we appreciate you guys super much. And we'll see you next week.